Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. I'm quite excited because this week I've got a double treat for you. I have not one but two brand new moulds from Let's Resin. They're called crystal ball moulds and they're very different to the norm, and I think a change is as good as a rest. So if you would like to see these very unusual moulds put into action, stay tuned and enjoy the video. I really wanted to show you both of the moulds in action today, and so I'm mixing up enough resin to fill both moulds, and that is actually quite a lot of resin, so I'm using 2 silicone pots for that. I always find it really difficult to read the numbers on the sides of the silicone pots, and so I always use my black marker pen just to mark where I need my resin to reach up to, and then it's nice and easy. I'm marking out the 5 fluid ounce mark and the 15 fluid ounce mark because I will be measuring out 5 fluid ounces of part B and 10 fluid ounces of part A. I'm using the deep pour resin and it's a 2:1 mixing ratio. Both of the moulds I will be filling take roughly 15 fluid ounces of resin, but one of them won't be completely filled and one of them is over 15 fluid ounces, so it should just about work out just right doing 2 lots of 15 fluid ounces. You didn't really need to know that, did you? Anyway. Once I'd finished measuring it all out, I gave it a really good stir. The great thing about deep pour resin is it's got a very long working time and you don't need to rush, so you can stir for as long as you like, and you know that it's completely mixed when it looks quite clear and there's no striations in there. If you look at the moment, you can see there's lots of lines in there, and that means it's not completely mixed. All those lines that appear whilst you're stirring it will disappear when it's completely combined. After mixing it for around 3 minutes, I put it into my bubble removal machine, also from Let's Resin. This isn't essential for deep pour resin. It's out of all the different kinds of resins, deep pour is the best one at degassing all by itself. It's very thin and it takes a long time to cure. So over that long curing time, it has plenty of opportunity for all those tiny little bubbles to raise to the top by themselves. But I've got it, so why not use it? Right, the first one I'm going to do is the mushroom crystal ball mould, and I actually purchased these mushrooms off Amazon, and I know that was a little bit extravagant of me to go buying them when I could just make some out of polymer clay or air dry clay or something like that, but I was kind of in a rush. I'd only just received the moulds, but I thought, yes, I'll use that for next Sunday's video. And I thought, if I'm using deep pour resin, that's going to take some time. I don't have long. So yeah, I did purchase the mushrooms, but they're good, aren't they? They're really good. And that wire that's sticking out the bottom of them, I bent it over so it was like a hook, and that way I could elevate the mushrooms over the top of the mould all at the same level, and that's why I've put extra wire on, as you will have seen there. The plan was to hook them over sticks which would be going across the top of the mould, and the reason why I extended them with the extra bit of wire was because I didn't want them too close to the bottom of the finished piece. I wanted them a little bit higher up, and so that's why I'm not hanging them from the hook that I bent over. I wanted a little bit of extra space, and that's why I put the extra bit of wire on. I hope that makes sense. And of course, you can put anything you like inside your crystal ball. It doesn't have to be mushrooms. I think it would be quite good with a photograph in. Perhaps you would have a photograph of, say, a pet that sat on the grass, and that would look really good with the woodland theme and the mushrooms around it. That would be good. I wouldn't suggest using a photograph of a person inside the crystal ball because it really distorts, I've found, when you use, a photograph in a ball shape and the nose ends up looking real big. You can just about get away with it with an animal, but yeah, it does distort the faces a little bit if you use pictures of people in there. So just a word of warning. Although now I'm thinking back to a previous video and the picture I used in that one actually worked not too bad. So, I'm just contradicting myself there. But yeah, there it is for you to have a little peek. That one did turn out nice. Anyway, back to today's project. As you can see, I've half filled it with resin there. I'm just popping a few bubbles that appeared once I started pouring. I gave it a good move around, making sure that everything was coated and there were no air pockets in there. And then once I'd done all of that, I could hang the mushrooms in position. And once I had the mushrooms in position, I could carry on filling up the mould until the resin reached the bottom of the lowest hanging mushroom. If my clear resin had gone too high and gone over the end of the mushroom, then the finished piece would have appeared to have had a kind of flying or jumping mushroom with clear resin underneath it, and I didn't want that, so I was very careful not to pour it too deep. Okay then, onto my tropical themed crystal ball. It took me a while to think about what to put inside this one. I could really have just left it clear, but I decided to use some artificial flowers. These flowers are, I think they're supposed to be sweet peas. I do love sweet peas and that's why I got them. However, I did think they looked a bit like orchids as well, and as it's more of a tropical theme, I thought, yeah, the orchid flowers would work really well. And I love using the artificial flowers just because they're so robust and you don't have to worry about them falling to bits as you're manipulating them. So there I was just trying them out to see how many I would need and to see how nicely they would fit. Once I knew that they would work, well, I hoped they would work, I took them out and I added enough resin to fill up the bird part of the mould. And I gave that a really good squeeze to make sure that there were no pockets of air trapped in the awkward little bits of the bird. After doing that, I put the flowers back in and poured in the resin all the way up to the top for this one. And after pouring in the resin, I did keep giving the flowers a move around, a little bit of a squish here and there with a lollipop stick, just because with flowers there's always little places where the air rises and gets stuck and you end up with big bubbles in there if you're not careful. So do give them a good move around if you're going to use flowers. Right then, this is a few hours late. No, it's not. This is the next day and I was hoping that the resin was still quite tacky. With it being deep pour resin, it's often quite tacky the next day, and it did leave an indentation when I pressed onto the surface, but it wasn't actually tacky. So the next thing you're going to see me do did go a bit wrong, but never mind. I like to keep everything in to explain, even if things don't go as I planned them to go. Anyway, I'm waffling. I haven't even got to that yet. I'm just removing the sticks and the wire before I can do the bit that didn't work. So I wanted grass around my mushrooms, and I found some green flocking powder in my box of bits and bobs, and I thought if I sprinkled that onto the tacky resin, that would work really well. However, because the resin wasn't tacky, as I've already explained, it didn't stick. And I ended up pouring it all out and coming up with plan B. The reason it wasn't tacky was because we've had some really hot weather here, and the resin does cure faster in warmer weather, and Yeah, that's what had taken me by surprise. Here in England, we're really not used to having much warm weather, and I'm used to the deep pour resin taking 2 or 3 days to be ready. Yeah, it took me by surprise. So I poured out all the flocking powder and decided to use some UV resin from Let's Resin in there. I just poured it in and then added the flocking powder, and then that did work. I cured it with my wireless UV lamp, also from Let's Resin, and then that was ready. And then I was ready for the final step as far as the casting side of things goes. All I needed to do next was trim off the ends of the flowers and add the final layer of resin. For my mushroom one, I decided to add stones into the last part. I added a little bit of the regular epoxy from Let's Resin and then poured in some stones and gave it a good mix around to make sure they were all covered in resin. I didn't have many left of the stones I really wanted to use, the brown ones. I thought they'd look like soil, but yeah, I used everything I had there, and then I had some other coloured stones which I added after that. So yeah, it's just more of the same process, filling it up with stones, making sure that they're immersed, adding a bit more resin, adding a bit more stone until it was all filled up. And for the flowery one, there wasn't really much space. There was just enough space for a little bit of glittery resin. I do quite like to put glittery resin in the base of things like this. It just adds something extra. This is the pink opal chunky chunky glitter from Let's Resin. I'll leave links to everything I've used today in the video description if I've got links. I don't have links to things like the stones that I've just used because I've had those for years and years. Right, it's the next day and it's the exciting time. It's demolding time. I had a feeling these were going to be tricky, so there I have a bowl of soapy water all ready because I just knew I was going to need it. Here I'm just adding water a little bit at a time and trying to release the mould. I'm not trying to get the mould off at this stage. I'm just kind of pushing the water all around the inside to make sure that the mould is released from the resin, and that really does help a lot. But what I would say is wear gloves. I decided to wear nitrile gloves for this because I always cut my fingers when I'm doing something like this. Every time I have little cuts on my fingers, so I thought no, not this time. But it wasn't long before my gloves got cut instead, and I realised they just were not heavy duty enough. They were fine for the bit where I was getting wet, but after I'd finished that bit, I went and got some tougher gloves from the kitchen, and yeah, they were much safer. Look. So yeah, fast forward and I've got my much safer gloves on. These came with my mandolin so that I don't grate my fingers when I'm grating things on the mandolin. And they're really, really good. I would highly recommend a pair of gloves like this. So yeah, it was hard work, but once I got there, I got there. You just kind of, once it's all released, you just kind of push it downwards on the sides, and it's quite easy actually once it gets started. And then once you get to the bird part, it comes off easily. And although it was still early days, I was very happy with the way the flowers looked. That was a definite success. I do love Let's Resin's deep pour resin. It's beautiful. And because you don't need to see the demolding process twice, I've cut it out with the mushrooms. Let's just have a look to see how they turned out. And once again, I was very happy with the finished, well, not finished, but you know what I mean. I was very happy with the casting and the way the mushrooms looked. It looks really good, doesn't it? And yeah, I couldn't wait to get painting and see how it would look when the outer mushrooms were painted and to bring it all together. But yeah, so far, so good. And before I did any painting, I got my nail file, very old nail file by the looks of it, and just filed down the edges because they were very sharp and I really didn't want to cut myself. Next, it was time for the painting, and I'm not going to talk all the way through the painting. You've heard me enough for one day. So all you really need to know before I stop talking is that I'm using acrylic paint, and you will need at least 2 layers if you're doing something like this, especially with white. I actually did 3 layers of the white paint. So anyway, I hope you enjoy watching the painting process. we have it all completed. And yeah, I actually thought my favourite would be the mushrooms. Yeah, I wasn't too excited about the bird mould. It just isn't really, I didn't think it was my cup of tea. But seeing it finished, I changed my mind. The mould won me over. And instead of doing it as the traditional, very colourful parrot, I went for a parakeet because I like green and pink together. And because there were green and pink colours in the flowers, I thought a green bird would work really well. And yeah, I'm really happy with the finished results. What do you think? And here's the mushroom one. In an ideal world, I would have spent a little bit longer on the shading, on the stems of the mushrooms. But yeah, I had two to do and I was running out of time. So yeah, there's not so much detail as I would like, but I still think it looks awesome. I think the inner mushrooms that are cast inside the crystal ball go so well with the way I've painted the outer mushrooms. And yeah, I think it's just awesome. Very, very cute. And what about a fairy in there? Can you imagine a little fairy? That's given me an idea. So yeah, there's both of them all finished. I really hope you enjoyed watching me make them. If you're interested in any of the products I've used today, please check out my video description where you will find the links and discount codes. If you haven't already subscribed and you would like to, please do. I would love to get a little bit closer to 100,000. I'm still quite a long way off, but I'm getting there bit by bit, and a thumbs up would really help me a lot. So that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching and bye for now.